Hello everyone, just getting things set up still. And while I'm doing that, I will watch the chat to say hello to you guys while I send this out to social media. Hello Atakeen, glad to see you. Hello Kaho-chan, so glad to see you as well. I did, Atakeen, I did. Hello, Cube, how are you doing? So glad to see you. I'm just getting this sent out to social media and all that. Trump. Fucking hashtags, man. Fucking hashtags. Okay, apparently I can't share this to Facebook anymore. Well, not that I really care. But whatever, minds. Whatever you say. Mine's apparently released a small update recently. It's not terrible. Let's, one more. Just gotta post this too. By the way, you like the name of the, stream? 'Cause I really did. I had fun. I couldn't think of what to call it, and then I realized, oh, I know exactly what to call it. The Fuck China Happy Fun Time Hour. Alright, let us hit that send button, close all these down. Now I need to really quickly hit studio, go over to browser and camera, and make sure it's actually looking at the right goddamn window. There it is. There we go. And then just scoot that over here, I guess, and scoot you down and away from the edge. And yeah, I can now switch over to my camera. There we go. Sorry if I look like shit. Oh shit, I forgot to turn my light on. Sorry. Just a second. Ugh, I'm an idiot this morning. Bon la cow, mes amours. My name is Sevi Rose, and I am so glad to be here with you. We are going to have some fun today. Now, I know I've been talking a lot about QAnon the last 3 or 4 streams, but I wanted to take a break from that and actually look at the news at large, the world at large. Because, good lord, there is a shit ton of things going on right now. I've got a list right here of... We've had our 3rd best day on the stock market ever, with a 690-point jump. A huge jump that no one's actually talking about the origin of, but I'll get to that later in the show. McConnell is now pushing for legal hemp as an agricultural product, which is absolutely fascinating for multiple reasons, primarily reasons related to the Rockefeller family, who no longer has the power to fight against it. Cambridge Analytica has been found to be in violation of US election laws, but not in relationship to Trump, in relationship to what they did with Obama. The FTC launched a probe into Facebook and Cambridge Analytica. As it turns out, the gunman at the Pulse nightclub, I think that was about 1.5 years ago now, his father was an FBI informant, and that's not the only FBI informant we're going to be hearing about today. It's been revealed that Facebook has been recording text messages and phone calls made if you have their application installed on your phone. So, yeah, if you haven't installed Facebook on your phone yet, fucking do it. Twitter is now banning crypto ads. Comey has announced a book tour, and that's going to go over just as well as Hillary Clinton's What Happened. Senator Lindsey Graham, has subpoenaed the FBI for information on the Clinton investigation, as well as Representative Goodlatte has done the same. And we are getting a ton of stories. Just the craziest shit is going on. Yes, uninstall Facebook from phone. They are recording all your text messages and all your phone calls and using it in their data collection systems. Hello, Kevin Buktula. Good to see you again. But to start off, I would like to talk about a story that I just found hilarious amongst everything else. Woman arrested for making lewd comments to Easter Bunny. Mansfield, Ohio. A 54-year-old Ohio woman was arrested Saturday afternoon for allegedly making lewd comments to an Easter Bunny at a carousel park. According to Mansfield police, LaDonna Hewitt appeared to be drunk when she made the comments to the Easter Bunny while having her picture taken with it at the Richland Carousel Park. She then began riding the carousel. Hewitt's speech was reportedly slurred, her eyes were bloodshot, and her breath smelled of alcohol. She was arrested and charged with drunkenness. Now, I'm not a fan of the laws being used here to arrest her, but at the same time, I can't help but laugh at this story. I cannot help but laugh because it's just so beautifully perfect. It's just so perfect. Hello, Curated Opinion. So glad to see you. Here we have just the tiniest amount of non sequitur to start our day, in which a woman has openly started flirting with an Easter Bunny and made quote-unquote lewd comments, and I think the video actually has information on...
A woman is under arrest accused of making lewd comments to an Easter Bunny. Police were called to Richland Carousel Park in Mansfield on Saturday.
No, this isn't the video that had it, but it's just... I saw the headline and I read the article and I was laughing for like a good 15 minutes about this, just giggling to myself. Because of all the shit going on, this is news. This is what people are talking about. Thank you, Fox 8, for reminding me why I don't watch much mainstream news. Anyway, back to the story. Yes, I did comment on that. I'm not a huge fan of the intent to arrest over flat drunkenness or drunken disorderly behavior. I understand why it's a law, but at the same time, it's not the kind of law I would want to... It's not the kind of law I would want enforced if I were running a country. That said, it's kind of standard in the United States. Public drunkenness is considered an arrestable offense. However, she probably won't be held for very long. At most, she'll be charged and have to serve community service. I think comically she might end up doing community service as an Easter Bunny. But yes, let us get on with the actual news here. So one of the more worrying stories that has hit the news today is that a bunch of suspicious packages were found around at several military and intelligence installations in the DC area. Now, the title here only says military installations. However, the CIA office off of Pennsylvania Avenue and the DIA office on K Street have also been listed at places that were targeted with these mysterious packages with apparent explosive components. Hello, Celtic Rudesinger. Good to see you. Oh God, I'm so glad I brought this story up first. We can only hope the community service isn't on a rabbit farm. Oh God, gonna flirt with the rabbits. Anyway, the FBI is investigating suspicious packages with apparent explosive components at several U.S. military installations and intelligence facilities in the Washington, D.C. area Monday, a law enforcement official said. The National Defense University at Fort McNair in D.C. received a suspicious package about 8:30 a.m. as the building was evacuated. The package tested positive for black powder, which can be used to make explosives. God, I fucking hate the news sometimes. It's black powder. It is an explosive, according to Fort McNair. An X-ray showed what appeared to be a GPS and a fuse. It was rendered safe, and the building was cleared about 1:15 p.m. The components are being investigated. Hello, Gypsy Guerra. Glad to see you. By the way, when they say it was rendered safe, what they mean is they put it in a box, irradiated it, and pumped it full of random signal transmissions, and basically forced it to explode in a contained area. There's only a few ways that on-scene bomb technicians do their job. One is putting the bomb into a box, reinforced steel, that produces a spectrum of radio waves, just random signals to get it to go off, as well as irradiating it. Alternatively, you can use an enclosed EMP system to disable all of the electronics at once. However, this isn't technically as safe as just setting off the bomb in a safe box. God, why does... I'm sorry, YouTube hates you, curated opinions. I'm approving all your messages, but they do not want them coming through. The components are being investigated. Suspicious packages were sent to 2 sites at Fort Belvoir in Virginia Monday afternoon. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or the NGA, I haven't spoken enough about the NGA, but they are they're the NSA, except instead of collecting internet and phone data, they collect the physical movements of people interacting with GPS information. So while the NSA tracks what you're saying, the GPA tracks where you're going. And other Defense University. One contained liquid in a vial and a circuit board, the law enforcement official said. It was also rendered safe. Similar suspicious packages were found at Joint Base Anacostia Bowling in D.C., a CIA mail processing facility, a White House mail processing facility, and Dahlgren Naval Air Station in Virginia. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams reported. These were all cleared as well. It's not clear if any of the packages were actual working explosive devices that could have been detonated. Some included rambling letters, and official described as disturbing. It's not clear if the packages are linked to each other, but officials say they do not believe they are linked to the recent bombings in Austin, Texas. The FBI is examining all the packages. Now, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up for a very specific reason. While these packages do pose, slight threat, even though the fact that they didn't go off, none of them exploded, and they were all rendered inert by one manner or another by bomb squad experts. This is something we're going to be seeing more and more. It's not the first time we've been seeing stuff like this, especially with the Austin bomber. These bombs were very unlikely, or supposed bombs, were very unlikely at all, what's the word I'm looking for? Sophisticated in design. In fact, I'm very strongly under the impression that based on the lack of information provided about the bombs so far, aside from the fact that an ongoing FBI investigation is involved, they're all very different. One used a circuit board and a vial of liquid. Another used black powder and electrical components and a GPS device. Don't be surprised if these bombs turn out to be complete, just fake bombs. Something made to look like a bomb, but mostly there to scare and not actually produce any damage. And don't be surprised if we never actually hear who did this, other than, having it blamed on the villain of the week. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we heard someone blame it on Russia, which would be So stupid. It'd be about as stupid as blaming Russia for people not dying of Novichok, which is, you know, something that's been irritating me a lot recently. For those who know anything about Novichok, well, those people should be dead if they were exposed to it, but they're not. They're in critical condition and no one's allowed to talk to them. And likewise, these bombs didn't go off, no one was hurt, there were just evacuations and the bombs were calmly collected. I have no evidence to say who did this, but I honestly suspect this is part of a show, a play as it were. Someone trying to make it look like the United States is being attacked. And if not that, I wouldn't be surprised if some Antifa fuckers decided to, you know, play a game. Remember that the Austin bomber was 24 or 26 years old? A fucking kid. And these bombs, based on their descriptions that I've been able to find, are nowhere near as sophisticated as his bombs. We might be looking at a few children who consider themselves anarchists playing, you know, essentially a prank. And with that said, if you find any mysterious packages, pay close attention, right? This is, you know, it's serious shit, but at the same time, don't immediately jump to the conclusion that you're going to die. If anything, from all of the bombs that we've seen in the last 2 years or so that have come out, most of these bomb makers are fucking amateurs. They're not good at what they're doing. How many victims of the Austin bomber were there? How many victims total? Don't play a video, you asshole. Don't play a video. 1, 2... Go away. Fuck you, CNN. 2, 3... 3! 3 victims. With, like... Oh, see, I told you no video. I told you no video, CNN. See, that's what you get. You're gone. 3 victims of 3 bombs. 3 victims of 3 bombs. That is... The guy might as well have had a gun with how inefficient he was. But the fact of the matter is, these bombs that we keep seeing are completely inefficient. They're not... I mean, yes, there is a bit of fear, and there are people that can get damaged from this. But what we're looking at more and more are amateurs. Complete fucking amateurs. Well, okay, yes, 4 with his death, but I guess I didn't count that one because live by the bomb, die by the bomb, you know? So, if you receive a mysterious package, a package that you're not expecting, that doesn't have a return address, don't pick it up. If there's a reason to be worried, call the police, have the bomb squad investigate. Even if it's a fake bomb, as I'm describing here, you want the police to investigate this shit. And this is coming from a person who doesn't trust the police that much. I trust them about as far as I can throw them, and I don't know if... I mean, you saw me stand up. I don't have much bulk to me. I can't throw a police officer. But anyway, continuing on... The next story we're actually going to cover... No, this one. Is one thing that I've been covering on and off for the last few months, and that is the California's sanctuary state movement, which is now being challenged by Orange County. The anti-sanctuary state movement picks up steam in Orange County. Just more than a week after the tiny Los Alamitos voted to defy California's law protecting immigrants and the country illegally, Orange County is poised to become a counterpoint against the state's resistance to the Trump administration's policies. That's a really confusing sentence, or rather, segment of a sentence. Orange County is poised to become a counterpoint against fuck your double negatives, who wrote this, Cindy Carmaco, the state's resistance to the Trump administration's policies. In other words, Orange County is counterpointing the state's resistance against Trump. See, now you're making me do it. Orange County agrees with Trump, but they won't say that. They can't put it in such simple words. On Tuesday, Orange County supervisors may consider whether to take up a resolution to condemn and possibly take legal action against the state's sanctuary laws. These state laws are preempted by federal law, Orange County Supervisor Sean Nelson said. Our officers actually face penalties under state law if they so much as talk to federal agents for the wrong thing. That is just unacceptable, and it's contrary to federal law. Nelson said he'll broach in a closed session whether to join a federal lawsuit against the state or launch its own litigation. Sorry. Other cities in the county, including Yorba Linda, Buena Park, Huntington Beach, and Mission Viejo, are also starting to take action to voice their grievances against the state's sanctuary laws aimed at protecting immigrants from President Trump's immigration crackdown. Illegal immigrants. Aimed at protecting criminals, in other words. But of course, again, this is an author from the Los Angeles Times, and it's extremely unlikely that she's going to address the raw facts about these things. Nelson jumped on board of a resolution initially brought on by an Orange County supervisor, Michelle Steele, that would condemn the state's sanctuary laws. She later added wording that would direct the county's public counsel to take legal action. We cannot allow this to happen in Orange County, and we need to protect our families and our homes here in Orange County, she said, and that means bolstering our cooperation with federal immigration enforcement and stopping our county from becoming a sanctuary for criminal illegal immigrants. Thank you, Sheriff Nelson. You are doing something that is going to be viewed very unpopularly in California, but is absolutely necessary to be done. People have to stand up and say these things. People have to address the fact that these are criminal and illegal immigrants. They are criminal for being there. Illegally, without paperwork, without visas, without green cards, without any legal or customs-based reason for them to be there. They're taking jobs. They're affecting the economy by driving down wages in skill-based and manual labor-based industries. And they work for the richest people in that overly wealthy state as it is for completely illegally. People in, Christ, if you live in California, just look into all the people who run the tech companies and the media companies out there. Every one of them has gotten in trouble in one way or another connected to hiring illegals. Hiring illegal immigrants to work essentially as slaves, mind you. Here these people are they're saying we're protecting immigrants. No, you're not. You're promoting the rich enslaving illegal immigrants doing shitty fucking jobs that, yes, they're willing to do, but nonetheless, they should be protected from doing, or at least paid fairly and in the country legally. It's not like these people don't have the money to get a hold of an attorney who handles this very kind of thing. Once a conservative and Republican stronghold, Orange County has undergone stark demographic shifts. In 2016, Hillary Clinton defeated Trump in the county, which a Democrat hasn't won in a presidential election since the Great Depression. This is kind of a misrepresentation. While Hillary Clinton did win by about 4% in Orange County, that was in no small part due to the fact that ballots were lost in Orange County. The election was basically rigged against Trump in Orange County, which he probably should have won. Orange County is a big Trump supporter stronghold to this day. The issue of illegal immigration and sanctuary laws has been highly divisive in Orange County. Orange County Sheriff Sandra Hutchins, along with other California sheriffs, spoke out in opposition to the law SB 54. It's a State Bill 54, the bill that essentially turns California into a sanctuary state and enforces sanctuary laws on all of the major cities in California. On Monday, Hutchins made inmate release dates, including for those in the country illegally, public in response to the state law. Now, this is something that's actually really fascinating. I want you to think about what he did here. On Monday, Hutchins made inmate release dates, including for those in the country illegally, public in response to state law. In other words, he went out and said, these are the people that we in our state have arrested for being in the country illegally. This is when they're going to be arrested. Dear federal officers, make sure you pick them up right outside the jailhouse. We have an obligation to safeguard our community, and we will use every tool available to help hold criminals accountable, said Orange County Undersheriff John Barnes. Our inability to relinquish these individuals to the custody of ICE causes them to be returned to the communities on which they prey upon. Precisely. That is exactly what is going on, and it needs to be addressed. The reason that Hutchins did this is because if these criminals are released because of State Bill 54 in California, these criminals who are in jail and prison will be released into these communities in California and be free to not only be an illegal immigrant in California, but also continue committing crimes in California. From January 1st to March 19th, the agency released 172 inmates in the country illegally into the community because of the state law prohibiting authorities from notifying ICE, said Carrie Brown, a spokeswoman for the Sheriff's Department. It's unclear if any of those people, whose convictions include domestic violence, theft, driving under the influence, and criminal threats, have recidivated. Recidivation, by the way, is returning to jail after being released. Orange County gave birth to Proposition 187, a ballot initiative approved by voters that sought to deny public services such as public schooling and health care to people in the country illegally. The measure was eventually struck down in the courts. And Costa Mesa passed anti-day labor ordinances and became the epicenter of the anti-illegal immigration movement during the mid-2000s. Now, those anti-day labor ordinances actually screwed over a lot of poor sub-working class individuals and the homeless. However, because Costa Mesa is so small, most of those homeless people moved to Los Angeles, where they were able to get jobs, day labor jobs. So it's not like they were actually causing a problem. It's not like it actually caused a complete problem. The day labor agencies in Costa Mesa actually were able to redirect people to Los Angeles and Riverside County in order to assure that their day labor jobs were not interrupted. Since then, however, much of the county's anti-illegal immigration fervor has eased after many of its cities experienced an influx of Latino and Asian immigrants. But the anti-sanctuary momentum gained ground in Orange County shows that it remains a place with a very conservative core. It really does. If you look into the sheriffs and police departments in Orange County and the city of Orange, you'll find that most of these people were very staunch Trump supporters and fight tooth and nail for the rule of law. Orange County is fascinating in that it's not nowhere near the wealthiest county in Southern California, but it maintains its wealth much more conservatively, I might say, than most other places in California. And this is one of the reasons why this community has been at odds with the rest of the greater Los Angeles area for so long. And despite the fact that, immigrants, both legal and illegal, have been moving into Orange County, specifically areas like Costa Mesa and Mission Viejo, the beachfront properties of Huntington Beach, Venice Beach, not Venice, Huntington Beach, there's the beach right north of Huntington. I can't remember it off the top of my head. And the like have all remained extremely conservative. And it's concerning. It's concerning that this county is basically being divided against itself by immigration. SB 54, which Governor Jerry Brown signed after the legislature passed it last year, prohibits state and local police agencies from notifying federal officials in many cases when immigrants potentially subject to deportation are about to be released from custody. This is actually a huge problem. Essentially, if a person is arrested in California and they're an illegal immigrant, it's not allowed to be disclosed to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement that they are an illegal immigrant, essentially preventing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement from knowing that they need to pick this person up at the gates. Which is why the Sheriff's Department making that public announcement of the release dates of these prisoners is so important. It means that ICE is allowed to do their job in California with or without State Bill 54 coming into play. The Trump administration went to federal court to invalidate the state laws, contending they blatantly obstruct federal immigration law and thus violate the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, which gives federal law precedence over state measures with regards to federal immigration specifically. And that case is still pending. Legal costs is one of the reasons Yorba Linda Mayor Jean Hernandez said the city has not done what Los Alamitos did. And yes, it is extremely important. It's extremely expensive to go to court against California. We're talking about a state that is run by an assembly that is so corrupt. Every year you hear about people skimming off the educational fund, skimming off the homeless funds, skimming off anything they can, and using that to invest in exorbitantly beautiful houses well outside the budget of an assemblyman or legislator in California. Instead, the city, Yorba Linda, voted to send a supporting amicus brief to the federal lawsuit. The city's decision was prompted by a request from the National Field Director of Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, an anti-illegal immigration and immigration restrictionist group in D.C. A letter directed to Hernandez said that FAIR's legal team, the Immigration Reform Law Institute, has been working to support the federal government, and that FAIR has been searching for California cities and counties who are interested in filing supporting amicus briefs. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm a little bit nauseous right now. I woke up kind of sick, but I didn't want to go without doing a stream. Filing supporting amicus briefs in this lawsuit. Brian Lonergan, spokesman for IRLI, disputed this idea that it or FAIR had approached cities. Instead, he said cities in the state had approached them. This is kind of confusing, and until I can find a copy of this letter, take both sides with a grain of salt. However, it's important to recognize that Yorba Linda wanted to do something about this even if they couldn't afford it. Yorba Linda is not a wealthy city, mind you. On the outskirts, southern outskirts of Orange County, it's a place where my great-grandmother actually lived for a while. And it's mostly a retirement community. It has decent schools, but there are entire swaths of land dedicated to retirement community homes. And the fixed income nature of the Yorba Linda City area causes it to be rather limited with city-level taxes. But this is actually very fascinating, and it's important to note that most of the counties and cities addressed in here are also counties and cities who are interested in joining into the California secession movement, in which they want to divide California into two states, Liberal California and New California, or whatever they're going to call them. It's quite fascinating and quite interesting that California is literally in a civil war with it, a cold civil war, but a civil war nonetheless with itself over the subject of immigration. Because California seems to be following in the footsteps of Rome, of all things, by not so much expanding their land and incorporating non-citizens into their ranks, but still incorporating non-citizens into their ranks from other places by people who want to get the fuck out of their country. I mean, let's face it. The people who come to California from Mexico, from China, from South Korea, from Taiwan, from Thailand, from the Philippines, all of these people want to get the fuck away from a place that they consider worse. And they are willing to do so illegally if the needs be. And on top of that, California has a huge problem, much like the rest of the West Coast, with shipping containers full of humans to be sexually trafficked in the state and the country at large, being injected into their illegal immigrants, their illegal immigrant counts. It was just, was it 2-3 weeks ago? I believe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a shipping container that was found in the docks in or around San Francisco. It might have been north of San Francisco, where 200 Chinese individuals were being smuggled into the country, and it was believed to be for the sake of human trafficking and sex work. And of course, these are the human trafficking stories that the mainstream media refuses to address because they're related to Donald Trump's attacks on human trafficking and sex trafficking in the United States. A subject that I'm going to be talking about more and more because it's just that fucking important. I'm proud of California, or at least the parts of California who are fighting back and trying to maintain some semblance of integrity in their state. This is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. That's why I went with the story. However, we now are going to move into what is going to be the bulk of my show, and that is fuck China. Now, why do I say fuck China? Well, I say fuck China for multiple reasons. One, they're a currency manipulator. They will do whatever they can to exert financial supremacy, whether that be through the process of buying up resources in Africa, buying up bonds in the United States, performing levels of insider trading that just cannot be addressed because of the way that they do it. They have Chinese board members interacting with companies and then traveling to China and reporting what happens, and then a Chinese individual who lives in the mainland of China will then use that information to handle the trading and basically do what was done back in the early 20th century, which is lie about a situation or observe a situation that's about to happen, tell everyone the opposite, and then short the stock market around that matter. This is actually something that happens in tech a lot, which is why we're actually going to start with this story. The FCC wants Chinese tech out of US phones and routers. Don't make a sound. Don't you make a sound, video. U.S. officials are discouraging U.S. telephone and internet companies from purchasing Chinese technology that could be used for surveillance, FCC Commissioner Ajit Pai announced Monday. Threats to national security posed by certain communications equipment providers are a matter of bipartisan concern, Pai said. hidden backdoors into our networks in routers, switches, and virtually any other type of telecommunications equipment can provide an avenue for hostile governments to inject viruses, launch denial of service attacks, steal data, and more. This is the part that concerns me the most: steal data. If you own a ZTE phone, if you own a Huawei phone, odds are China is able to collect information on you just as efficiently, if not more efficiently, than the NSA does. This is something I've talked about quite a lot, and I really, if you have this equipment, search how to remove the Chinese chips from your phone. It can be done. It's not actually that hard. You just need a pair of dikes and a soldering iron. And tiny little chips on the board, which essentially monitor all data passing through the system, and then can transmit that data Trojan horse style back to China for their own personal NSA supercomputer center style system. Pi plans for the FCC to vote next month on a rule that would bar U.S. companies from using a federal subsidy program to purchase equipment from companies entangled with foreign intelligence agencies. The proposed rule is being considered in light of congressional concern that AT&T and Verizon might purchase phones or other hardware from Huawei, I can never say that correctly, a company that U.S. intelligence community believes is in cooperation with Chinese spies. They absolutely are. Again, go Google it. You can find tutorials on how to identify the teeny tiny little ROMs that are installed in Huawei and ZTE phones for the purpose of spying on Americans. I believe that the FCC has the responsibility to ensure that this money is not spent on equipment or services that pose a threat to national security, Pai said. House and Senate Intelligence Committee members urged Pai to impede such sales, a case that the U.S. intelligence community bolstered by briefing the FCC on Huawei's suspected role in Chinese surveillance efforts. As a member of the House Intelligence Committee, it was made clear to me that Huawei cannot be trusted and would pose a security threat if given access to U.S. government networks. Representative Mike Turner of Ohio said Monday, "The FCC's decision to not use Huawei products is an important step in protecting it from possible security breaches, and I fully support them in this." Mike Turner, by the way, is one of the individuals in the House of Representatives that I think is pretty on the level. He's not perfect, don't get me wrong. His voting record is pretty shitty, but at the same time, he's kind of, what's the term? He's green. He's kind of a freshman. He's not a complete freshman. I believe he's had 6 years. But compared to the people who have been in the House of Representatives for upwards of 20 years, he's still pretty green behind the ears. And he's been very supportive of work that Good Latte, and I keep saying Good Latte. I know it's Good Lot, but I find it so funny to think of it, to say Good Latte. It's just cute in my mind. He's been very supportive of Good Latte. He's been very supportive of Nunez and Gowdy. He's pretty on the level. And yes, I know that Gowdy has been shown to be a little bit more all bark and no bite in the last year. But at the same time, even having him in there is something I approve of. Someone who is willing to challenge anyone on a legal level in the House of Representatives is absolutely a necessity. Whether you agree with his politics or not, the way he goes about it is very effective. We will continue working with the FCC and other agencies to address supply chain vulnerability issues, U.S. Telecom, a trade association representing the broadband industry, said Monday. Consumers and businesses alike correctly expect their information is secure when traveling across networks, and U.S. Telecom will continue participating in government and industry-wide efforts to construct responsible, reasonable, and effective solutions. Now this is all just bullshit. If US Telecom is speaking, you know they're lying. If someone from US Telecom's lips are moving, you know they're fucking lying. Why? Because US Telecom is an NSA front, and until Admiral Rogers took control of the NSA, they were the ones pushing all of the different telecom companies to install NSA hardware for the sake of spying. Don't trust US Telecom. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, who had sounded the alarm about the spy threat posed by Chinese tech companies, praised Pai's proposal as a victory for individual privacy and national security. Of course, Tom Cotton has never spoken against the NSA spying programs, but that's a story for another day. Now, Congress should do its part by passing the bill I've introduced that would prohibit the U.S. government from using any of Huawei's products, he added Monday. Of course, getting China out of our hardware is just one part of the problem. Unfortunately, the way things are going right now, something that drives me insane is the fact that we talk about government transparency. The government is not transparent at all, yet they have created transparency in their citizens. They have created transparency by literally spying on absolutely everything. I mean, fuck. Let's go back to WikiLeaks and look at all of the programs the CIA and NSA have leaked. The Hive, Protego, AngelFire, ExpressLane, the CIA hacking tools, leaks. Couch Potato, Dumbo, Imperial, Raytheon, Highrise, Bothan Spy, Outlaw Country, which is literally viruses targeting Linux, by the way. So you think you're safe on Linux? No, you're slightly more safe. Elsa, Brutal Kangaroo is hilarious, by the way. That's one of my favorite names for a program. Brutal Kangaroo. Xiaomi, I believe Xiaomi is okay. I have not heard anything about Xiaomi phones being spy devices, but if something comes up, I will let you guys know. I mean, look at all of these applications used to spy on us, to spy on Americans. But yes, now that they've been leaked, of course, China has undoubtedly adapted them for their own purposes, and this is, you know, a constant cyclical problem that needs to be addressed. But this isn't the only thing going on with China, because apparently Kim Jong-un has visited Beijing. A mysterious armored train traveled from North Korea to Beijing and then headed back without revealing its key secrets. Was Kim Jong-un on board? Speculation about a visit to Beijing by North Korea's reclusive leader or another high-level Pyongyang official ran high Tuesday, amid talks of preparations for a future meeting between Kim and Donald Trump. The visit by the special train to Beijing and unusually heavy security at a guest house where prominent North Koreans have stayed seems to point to the possibility that Kim was making his first visit to China as North Korea's leader. Such a trip would be seen as a potential precursor to Kim's planned summit with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in in late April and his anticipated meeting with Trump by May. Analysts, however, questioned whether Kim would make the visit to Beijing himself rather than send an envoy. I can tell you right now, based on everything that we're seeing, the media is not reporting on it that much. In fact, they're completely ignoring it. But Trump has actually nearly convinced Kim Jong-un to de-escalate his nuclear program and focus on his people. This is an enormous step. De-escalation and de-armament of North Korea would restabilize a region that is otherwise completely destabilized, not only because of North Korea, but because of China. China has been moving its navy into the Yellow Sea and the South China Sea, doing routine practice, which is anything but routine, in a manner which indicates that they are well, playing a game very similar to what the Americans played 6 months ago when we moved our Navy into the Pacific around China and North Korea. Except when China does it, it's not a threat against North Korea. If anything, it's a threat against Eastern Russia and the United States. Now, Chinese naval carriers and Chinese battleships are all old U.S. ships. They do not have dry docks designed for making naval craft, and they can't produce their own. While China has an enormous billion-man army, what it does not have is an effective navy, and navy training is not that big of a threat. While there has been no word of a meeting with Chinese leaders, China has been one of North Korea's most important allies, even though relations have chilled recently because of Kim's development of nuclear weapons and long-range missiles. On Monday, heavy security was reported at Friendship Bridge on the Yalu River, making the border between China and North Korea before a train passed through the Chinese city of Dandong. There were reports of it transiting several stations on the way from North Korea to Beijing. Japanese broadcaster Nikkei TV reported that the green and yellow train appeared very similar to the one that Kim's father and predecessor Kim Jong-il took to Beijing in 2011. Video that aired on NTV also showed a motorcade of black limousines waiting at the train station and rows of Chinese soldiers marching on what appeared to be a train platform. The video did not show anyone getting off the train. However, if someone did get off the train, it would not have been seen. At least it would not have been seen from camera level. NGA probably has information about it, but they're not allowed to share it with us. At around 2:45 p.m. Tuesday, a convoy of about a dozen cars, including a black limousine, was seen heading in the direction of the railway station. The limousine was seen about 10 minutes later entering the station under a heavy security presence. The station itself was closed to the public in an unusual security measure. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying asked whether Kim or another North Korean official was visiting Beijing, said, "I know you're all very curious, but I have no information on that." Something I feel I need to describe here. When China is doing something aggressive, when they're playing the dragon, they put on the face of the panda. The only time you have to worry about China is when they're talking about things calmly. If they're talking calmly, that means they're acting aggressively. If they're talking aggressively, that means they're taken off guard and they don't know what to do. There's a long history of the panda and the dragon mask that has been analyzed time and time again by political analysts in the world, in which China will put on its panda mask when it's being aggressive, and only ever shows its dragon mask. Only ever talks aggressively whenever they don't have anything to hide and they're taken off guard. This is one of the reasons in a story we're going to get to regarding the petro yuan, why I don't think that the petro yuan is actually that big of a problem for us, for the United States. Well, thank you, Arakin. Yes, Japan does have one of the best navies in the area, in no small part due to the U.S. Basically, most of the ships that the U.S. makes these days, we sell. The U.S. Navy makes ships. We have a great fleet of naval ships, but we only need as many naval ships as the next three largest navies combined. And as such, we end up selling to our closest allies, including Japan, the additional naval ships that we create, because after all, our Seabees need to do something. But yeah, where was I? North Korea's state-run media had no immediate reports of a delegation traveling to China. The speculation has been fueled further on Monday evening when a vehicle convoy entered the Diaoyutai State Guest House in Beijing. Diaoyutai, I hope I said that right. and a military honor guard and heavy security were seen later. The guest house has been the favored residence of Kim Jong-il during his visits to Beijing. On Tuesday, a convoy of official Chinese cars was seen leaving the guest house's east gate. City police and the paramilitary People's Armed Police stood guard in the area, and unidentified men in plainclothes attempted to prevent photographers from taking pictures. This is actually really common in China. Plainclothes spies will essentially go out and run camera interference. If they see anyone holding up a phone or a camera, they will walk up to that person and put their hands in front of the camera. They won't say anything, they won't do anything, they'll just fucking block the camera. Cars in the envoy were identified by yellow stickers but carried no diplomatic license plates. South Korea's presidential offices said it could not confirm reports that the train carried Kim, nor a separate report that Kim's sister was on board. South Korean analysts were doubtful that the visitor is Kim. Since succeeding his father in 2011, Kim has touted an image of his country as a diplomatic equal to China, and it's unlikely he would sneak into Beijing for his first face-to-face meetings with the Chinese leadership, the analysts said. However, there's no actual evidence that Chinese leadership was meeting with him. It could be... my theory on all of this, by the way, is not that he was meeting with anyone at the time, but rather that they were testing out the route and seeing what vulnerabilities existed. Where American, Chinese, or Japanese spies would be able to interfere with the situation, and where any sort of media figure or photographer would be able to obtain unlicensed photos, unsanctioned photos of the situation. As we all know, North Korea's supreme leader only ever has his picture taken in a sanctioned manner, and this is something that China intends to maintain. They intend to respect this level of bizarre showmanship for the sake of respecting the leader of North Korea, at least during a time in which he has his finger hovering over a nuclear bomb button. It's said that it's more likely Kim sent a special envoy, possibly his younger sister Kim Yo-jong, to appease a traditional ally ahead of his planned meetings with the presidents of South Korea and the United States. The envoy could potentially seek Chinese commitment for future support should North Korea's talks with rivals fall through, said Do Hyung-cha, a visiting scholar at Seoul's Asian Institute for Policy Studies. These conversations are not going to fall through. I can tell you right now that while Moon Jae-in might not be that successful in discussions, Donald Trump has already been in discussions as little as it gets announced in the media, and has moved North Korea closer and closer to proper disarmament. It's quite fascinating. But the fact that China is keeping all of this information so secretive really does make me wonder what their involvement in all of this is. I really want to know. I want to know what they're doing. I want to know why they're doing it, because we're talking about a madman and his wallet, essentially. Because North Korea has sanctions placed all over it that are violated by China regularly. Just all the fucking time. We have new pictures of ships from China going in and delivering goods, delivering money, delivering oil to North Korea in stark violation of the UN resolutions to sanction North Korea. So I would really like to know what China is doing here. Because while I suspect Trump will be able to lead to disarmament, I don't trust Xi Jinping any further than I can throw him, as I say. And that brings us to our last story for today. Well, 3 stories, but there's a lot of worry after yesterday's announcement of the opening of the petro yuan, the semi gold backed international dollar contract designed to allow China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and others to sidestep the US dollar, the petrodollar contracts, in order to obtain their oil needs. The highly anticipated yuan-backed crude oil futures have been launched in Shanghai. China is the world's biggest oil consumer, with eyes on rival benchmarks Brent and WTI, as well as the US currency. Trading of the new oil futures contracts for September settlement started on the Shanghai International Energy Exchange at 440 yuan, $69.70 per barrel, which is approximately $2 lower equivalently than what oil is selling at per dollar. Reports Chinese daily the South China Morning Post. Some 18,540 lots have been reportedly sold and purchased so far in the span of one day. The long-awaited step evoked a surge in global prices for oil, with Brent crude soaring to $71 a barrel for the first time since 2015. The U.S. crude benchmark West Texas Intermediate reached its highest level in 3 years at $66.55 per barrel before retreating to $65.53. Pay attention to these numbers, by the way, because Western Texas Intermediate is always going to be at least $2 to $3 lower than the petro yuan costs. Oh, am I getting spammers? Aw, how sweet of you. Aren't you wonderful? Let's just remove your advertisements. Thank you to you, Jesus to Mankind prayer groups. But that is not what we're here to do. I am not your advertising firm. At the same time, petro yuan launch is seen as a blow to the US dollar that has been weakening in recent months. The US dollar is the predominant settlement currency for oil futures contracts. On Monday, the greenback slipped to a 16-month low against the Japanese yen, but remained steady against a basket of 6 major currencies. This has actually started to rebound. Now that all of the futures contracts that China has for September have been sold, and we're talking about contracts in the ballpark of $10 billion, the rush was a big boom and then a big drop off. So we're going to see the petro yuan continue. Don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as intimidating as people are making it out to be. Chinese authorities have reportedly accelerated the launch amid growing crude imports. Last year, the country outpaced the U.S. as the world's #1 importer of oil. Thus, the contracts may not help to win some control over pricing the major international benchmarks, but also promote the use of the Chinese currency in global trade. The greenback will get weaker. I completely disagree with this section, so I'm not even going to read it. And I highly doubt that the US dollar is going to get... in the short run, yes. I suspect over the next month we're going to see a little bit of weakness in the US dollar with a competitor coming to rise against the petrodollar. But at the same time, this is China we're talking about. This is China we're talking about. How many people expect those oil barrels to be full when they get to their locations? How many people expect that China won't be skimming off the top of these oil barrels in order to fuel their own, in order to manage their own imports, to assure that other people are essentially paying for their oil imports? I'm telling you right now, that's what's going to happen, hands down. But that's not the only thing that's going to happen. Let's go back to the beginning when the petro yuan was announced. This is back on September 1st of 2017. in an article from the Nikkei Asian Review. China sees new world order with oil benchmark backed by gold. Yuan-denominated contracts will let exporters circumvent US dollar. China is expected to shortly launch a crude oil futures contract priced in yuan and convertible to gold in what analysts say could be a game changer for the industry. This is the part that makes it such a strong contender. This is the reason that gold prices have been climbing slowly, because everyone sees this as as contracts that are backed by gold, basically creating a little financial triangle of gold, oil, and the yuan, the Chinese currency. The contract could become the most important Asia-based crude oil benchmark, given that China is the world's biggest oil importer. Crude oil is usually priced in relation to Brent or West Texas Intermediate futures, both denominated in US dollars. China's move will allow exporters such as Russia and Iran to circumvent US sanctions by trading in yuan. This isn't 100% true. If they evade sanctions, they're still in violation of UN sanctions. This is one reason that the price of oil is not going to vary much between the WTI and the petro-yuan prices, and why the prices for WTI and Brent are going to remain like the outside edges. Brent only deals in futures, whereas West Texas Intermediate deals directly in the transfer of oil, and that's why West Texas Intermediate is able to be the low watermark for oil prices, and Brent is the high watermark for oil prices. To further entice trade, China says the yuan will be fully convertible to gold on exchanges in Shanghai and Hong Kong. This is the part that's actually interesting, because I can tell you right now, they don't have much gold. As much as they have in gold mines beneath the surface, they haven't been able to dig much of that up. All of the gold mines that have been found in China have been busts. They have gotten so little of it out that they are going to need to buy gold from other sources. Sources like, Brazil and India and, oh yes, the United States. What, you don't think the United States has gold? You think we sold off all our gold in 1948? Well, it's been a long fucking time since 1948, hasn't it? And I can tell you right now, our Federal Trade Commission wouldn't be doing an investigation of Fort Knox, which they are, if there wasn't gold to be found. We have gold. It's in Fort Knox. It's not what we expect, but it's there. And China is going to have to back the gold that they sell these convertible futures for with gold purchased from Brazil and the United States. The rules of the global oil game may begin to change enormously, said Luke Groman, founder of US-based macroeconomic research company FFTT. Never listen to macroeconomics. Never listen to macroeconomics. Just don't. The Shanghai International Energy Exchange has started to train potential users and is carrying out system tests following substantial preparations in June and July. This will be China's first commodities futures contract open to foreign companies such as investment funds, trading houses, and petroleum companies. Most of Chinese crude imports, which average around 7.6 million barrels a day in 2016, as compared to the United States' 6.8 million barrels, are brought on long-term contracts between China's major oil companies and foreign national oil companies. Deals also take place between Chinese majors and independent Chinese refiners, and between foreign oil majors and global trading companies. Now, take into account, China doesn't have any oil under its surface. All of the oil that China obtains comes from Western Africa, and comes from India, and comes from the Middle East. They basically buy up land and then stick up mining rigs. And if they miss, they miss. If they hit, they hit. Yes, Idaho does still have gold mines, by the way. Yes. Alan Bannister, Asia Director of S&P Global Platts, an energy information provider, said that active involvement of Chinese independent refiners over the last few years has created a more diverse marketplace of participants domestically in China, creating an environment in which a crude futures contract is more likely to succeed. China has long wanted to reduce the dominance of the US dollar in the commodities markets. Yuan-denominated gold futures have been traded on the Shanghai Gold Exchange since April 2016, and the exchange is planning to launch the product in Budapest later this year. Again, none of the gold that passes through the Shanghai Gold Exchange is Chinese gold, or at least less than 10%. Most of that gold is obtained in other countries, and China does their best to get what money they can off of these other countries by allowing them to use their currency to avoid sanctions, essentially. Which again is a violation of sanctions and currency manipulation in and of itself, and China's going to have to answer for that. And while it says here that the existence of yuan-backed oil and gold futures means that users will have the option of being paid in physical gold, this is not actually the case. If you expect that you're going to be able to get any of the gold out of China, you're horrifically mistaken. It's going to take years of investigations. It's going to be like trying to withdraw gold from a bank in the United States. It's not going to happen because of the layers of disconnect between the markets and the fiat currency. And don't misunderstand this. The yuan is not gold-backed. It's only that there is a gold exchange and an energy exchange, which are both run by the same company in Shanghai, that they can make the statements that gold-backed futures exist. They're not purely gold-backed, they're indirectly gold-backed. And you're essentially going to have to play a shell game in which you sell your oil for a futures you buy a futures contract, or you sell your oil to a futures contract. You then sell off that contract for an independent scrip, essentially, which can be used at any of the Shanghai exchanges. And then that scrip can be used to buy a gold futures contract, and that gold futures contract can be traded for gold. They're playing this off like you can literally walk into a building in Shanghai, give them a piece of paper and say, "Give me gold." No, that is not how this is going to work. And in fact, this, as much as this sounds like it's going to be great for China and terrible for the US, I'm not the only one who sees it as a potential boon for the US for multiple reasons. From FX Street, Petro-Yuan is a huge US success story, not a Chinese one. Ignore the hype about the death of the dollar and currency whales. The Petro-Yuan is a US success story. Bloomberg reports as trade war heats up, biggest currency whales make their move. A lot of countries around the world are turning to Europe for increased partnership and trade, said Jens Nordvik, who was Wall Street's top-ranked currency strategist for 5 years running, before setting up Exant Data a little over a year ago. It's not crazy to think that this is also going to be happening in the area of capital markets and reserve allocations. The bottom line is, this trade stance the U.S. has now is not helpful in terms of making the dollar attractive for central banks that hold billions in reserves. Nordvig estimates $500 billion could flow into the euro in the next 2 years, equal to a 25% boost in the currency's share of reserves. Developing countries and oil-exporting nations in the Middle East, which rely heavily on international trade, are the most likely to lift their euro allocations, he said. 6 emerging economies, China, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, India, South Korea, and Brazil, hold almost half the world's reserves, data compiled by Bloomberg shows. China alone has amassed over $3 trillion in foreign exchange, primarily as a result of its cheap exports to the U.S. It does not matter whether countries like the dollar or like euros. Reserves are mostly a function of trade math. As the U.S. deficit increases, and it will, foreign countries will accumulate more U.S. assets. It's a mathematical necessity that has nothing to do with likability. From time to time, countries like China may sell treasuries or other U.S.-denominated assets to stop capital flight. Is this the death of the dollar? China launched Petro-yuan futures started trading today. I am amused by the hype. The Petro-yuan is not about the likability of dollars, nor does it represent a desire by China to dethrone the dollar. Recall that the U.S. is on the verge of energy independence. As a result, the U.S. will buy less oil from the Middle East. China runs a huge trade surplus with the U.S., but also a big deficit with Middle East energy producers. These producers will now accumulate the yuan. 3 weeks ago, I reported the U.S. will overtake Russia to become the top oil producer by 2023. As a direct result, the Saudi trade surplus with the U.S. will crash. Those oil exporters are finally ready to hold yuan. The huge irony in all the petro-yuan hype is that it is a direct result of forthcoming U.S. energy independence. That's a U.S. achievement, far bigger than any symbolic gain by China. The idea that the yuan will soon replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency is ridiculous for currency reasons, political reasons, and economic reasons. For further discussion, see the gold-backed petro-yuan silliness, reserve currency curse. Basically what he's saying here is, because the U.S. is becoming more and more energy independent, both with a return to coal, research being done into making liquid coal fuel, the opening of the oil shale markets in the U.S., the reactivation of tons of oil fields in Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Texas, I believe there's one other location I'm forgetting, Alaska. We don't need oil to be traded in US dollars. And because of the political connections we have with the largest Middle Eastern oil provider, Saudi Arabia, suddenly our relationship with them isn't based on purely on trade, and it'll instead be based on this relationship that Trump has been building with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. What we are looking at is China essentially becoming, well, their own little governmental mafia, and using their ill-gained power to exert strength. However, that strength is not going to have any effect on the United States. In fact, the United States is going to grow, and mark my words, the US dollar, while it is slowly edging downward right now, is going to see an enormous boost soon. As soon as we see our steel markets, our independent oil markets, and our trade exports increase, the US dollar is going to skyrocket. And it's going to do so without depending on oil. This being the case, we are going to see the US dollar drop. And if the US dollar drops, there is the possibility in a state of fear that the dollar could be replaced with a new US trade currency dollar. Now, this is hypothetical, mind you, so take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But because of the, because of the advertising that China is using to say that their oil futures are backed by gold, and the fact that the Federal Trade Commission is investigating just how much gold we actually have in Fort Knox, I have the sneaking suspicion that we're going to see the U.S. return to the gold standard, at least in part, a gold contract standard. It'll still be a form of fiat currency, don't get me wrong, but it'll be a form of fiat currency far more stable and directly connected to gold reserves than the yuan could ever be. I honestly think it's going to happen. I really do. Now, call me crazy for that one. Call me, out in left field. But fiat currency has been failing the United States for about 15 years. It's been making us weaker and weaker because people have been accumulating reserves through illegal means, especially China. And if the Trump administration follows through on their interest in moving towards gold future-backed dollars, this would cause a currency reset. The US dollar would be reset, and every country and every corporation in the world would have to make reports as to, essentially script reports as to how much they have in US dollars in order to make the conversion to the new US dollar. And if they do that, well, anyone who doesn't report their ill-gotten gains suddenly sees their money vanish. It's wishful thinking, I know, but honestly, I see the petro-yuan as a boon to the US, and I see it leading to a much more stable US economy, not less stable. And with that, thank you all so very much for showing up. You all are absolutely wonderful. I am so sorry I look like shit today. I know it's been a long fucking day, and I know it's only just started, but nonetheless. Let me do my quick read off. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Gypsy Guerra. Thank you to Otaki and Green Moon. Thank you to J Will Series. Thank you to Celtic Rune Singer. I'm sorry. Kevin Bricktula, Lord of Cancer, Senor del Cancer, Curated Opinions, Kaho-chan, Cube, and everyone else who's watching in the background. I know you're there because, well, my statistics are right the fuck here. You all are wonderful. You guys keep me doing this, and I love doing it for you. I hope to see you next time. Take care.